for me, the first critical choice that I made was to actually make a first choice. You were not only in the audience when I delivered the TEDx talk, but we had all the background time together. And so you know the moment that I made my first choice, which was to pick up the phone when my sister called. Now, since then, I have made a number of first choices that weren't so profound. Some of them are just very practical. But what I've learned is that success begins with making a first choice. So for you, when you reflect on your journey to enduring success, what's a first choice that you'll share with us that has impacted your journey?
Wow. The one that's coming right to my mind when we go back to the beginning is, people ask me all the time, like, Corinne, how do you do what you do and things? And I've always sort of jokingly said, I say yes to the things that most people say no to. And I will be honest, in my young journey, in my younger days, I would tell you that I think that was much more ego driven. I think I wanted to always be the one that would do things a little different and a little rebellious, but it was also because growing up, I just, people sort of already thought my life was so perfect. I had a lovely family and, I had all these things, but it was still really challenging for me internally. And so I would make choices that were outside of the norm. And so the first one that comes to my mind is in my senior year of high school, all of my graduating class was doing their senior trip to Mexico. And that sounded like the worst experience in the world to me. Like, with a bunch of high schoolers that has already been, challenging for my whole life. And now we're going to go to a country where we're all going to get drunk and this sounds horrible to me. So I actually somehow signed up or found, and this is, dating myself, but in 1995. So it's not like I'm getting on the internet, searching this. And I chose to go on an Outward Bound adventure. So Outward Bound is an adventure school, and I live in Colorado, and I went on a 2.5-week alpine mountaineering course in the San Juan Mountains. And so that was the very first moment that I can tell you that I remember even being on the alpine mountaineering survival course, and we're trekking through snow, fields, and I'm having to build a snow cave. And I remember digging out this snow cave, and I'm 17 years old and saying, why am I doing this? Like, I could be on a beach right now with my friends drinking a Corona, and I am like, why do I keep choosing these hard things? And I think that was really, honestly, Trish, when I look back, that's how it's been ever since. I always make a choice that's so different, but it's always a challenge to me to grow myself. And it's not that I'm always happy with the choice, but I'm happy with the outcome afterwards, because it's what's harder. I feel like I choose, and I was choosing to be uncomfortable. I wanted to be comfortable being uncomfortable before that was like a catchphrase,
Yeah, and really, and you were so young, so it's so innate. Yes. It's such a part of you. And then you just like totally dove into chaos.
And then it just kept getting crazier. And just, as you know, from my, I don't know, but from my background is, I went to university, and a lot of people and it is, I know, a privilege, like went and studied abroad and did those things. But a lot of people would study abroad in France and Spain or England. And I picked a program where I went to Russia, China, and Nepal. It was insane. Who does that? And my study abroad group was 5 people. 5 of us.
Yeah.
So,
and then
just been that way.
Okay, so I'll get us back to the second critical choice. But will you just take me really quick through then where did you go from there to then begin your career? Like, so then what happened?
Yes. So essentially, I spent all this time as a studying cultural anthropology, doing this work.
So you studied that in school. That was like something you actually studied in school.
Yep. human
So
development.
you knew, like within you, that okay. So all right,
Yeah,
so keep
the
going. I
background was
interrupted
in
you.
human development, psychology, and cultural anthropology. And so
Okay.
I then, in my study abroad days, I met a boy, and, right, and I ended up moving to the UK, and he was British, and I lived in London for about 5 years in that sort of right after college phase. Got married to a British man, lived in the UK for several years, and was just sort of trying to discover myself. I worked actually, I did another degree while I was there in human nutrition. I worked as a nutritional counselor for some time while I was in the UK, which was very funny as a blonde American girl. Like, let's talk about health, right? Like, it was not quite fulfilling my
You're
soul.
like portion sizes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so and my husband at the time and I we decided to embark on a journey, and we took about 6 months and backpacked all around. We left from Mexico and backpacked all the way to Colombia and all through Central America, and just started seeing, other parts of the world in ways. And it was fascinating to me because that was my background. And we moved back to the US, where I live in Colorado, where my family was from, and had some babies. And, when they were about 2 and 4 years old, we decided that we were great friends, but we were on different life paths and different journeys. And so, it was an amazing, amicable divorce because it was a choice, a very conscious choice that I wanted to live this life of service and of giving back. And he really wanted a wife that was going to be a traditional wife and stay home and be with the kids. And so he was so proud of me when we divorced because I went and did exactly what I said I was going to do. And that's when I started getting connected with different nonprofit organizations that were connecting me with different contracts within the State Department, where we were running different leadership and development programs for youth around the world, specifically for me in sub-Saharan Africa. And that's really where my connection to Africa became. And I was running and working on all these leadership development programs. That was a big contract through the State Department. And it then, starts spiraling from there, and you become kind of known in that subject matter world of sub-Saharan Africa and those portions. And I started working for a very large nonprofit organization as a program director and clinics director, which was in the healthcare side of things, which wasn't my background at all. But I knew how to lead teams. I was getting very familiar in certain countries within Africa and had a lot of connections. And suddenly now I'm absolutely thrusted into this insane world of leading medical and training teams all around the world for one of the largest nonprofits in the world, of Project Cure, that delivers donated medical equipment and supplies. And people would ask me all the time, like, how are you doing that with these children? My kids were young. But honestly, it was because I had a great co-parenting relationship with their father. Because I seriously, Trish, when they were younger, I spent every month in the field. So I was 2 weeks overseas and 2 weeks home for years. And it
Wow.
was really challenging because it wasn't like I was in New York City or somewhere fun. I was in the Congo or in
Mhm.
the middle of Ecuador or somewhere, leading these training and medical teams around the world.
Wow. I mean, I know that, but I didn't
Yeah.
fully grasp
Yeah. Like,
all of
how
that.
did it all come
And
together? Yes. And then,
how did it
and
all
then
come
from there,
together?
I
I
left.
appreciate you, like,
Go
just,
ahead.
yeah, and it goes all the way back. I'm going to say it goes all the way back to making a first choice not to go to Mexico on your senior
Truly.
graduation, get drunk and vomit everywhere with everybody
Truly, it
else.
did, because who would do that, right? And there was a lot of, criticism and a lot of, sort of as a mother and women, you can all appreciate how hard it is to be working on your career and trying to be a great mom at the same time. And especially when your
Yeah,
career takes you away from your family, either mentally or physically, or, and in my case, it was very much emotionally and physically. And it was tough,
for sure.
and so it was a crazy time, but they got to have great
Thank you for
experiences
sharing
and
that.
they traveled with me a lot. So I think,
I mean, it's amazing, and now that they're
yeah.
amazing men almost. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Choose and Become interview series. To check out more episodes, go to www.trishkendall.com/podcast, or go to any of your favorite podcast channels, including YouTube, under Trish Kendall Speaks, and you'll find this interview and more. Choose and become.